Welcome to the Global Investor Podcast, a show that focuses on helping foreign investors enter the lucrative U.S. real estate market. Host Charles Carillo combines decades of real estate investing experience with a professional background in international banking to interview experts in all areas of U.S. real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Charles Carillo.
Welcome to another episode of the Global Investors Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Carillo. Today we have Ben Suttles. Ben started his career in IT sales and business development, and in 2013 started investing in commercial real estate. Since then, he's been involved in the acquisition of over 1,650 units, valued over $100 million. So thank you so much for being on the show, Ben.
Thanks, Charles. I appreciate it, man.
So what was your professional background prior to getting involved in multifamily and commercial real estate in 2013?
So like the intro said, right, I was the sales guy. You know, you find a lot of people in our business that are in IT, you know, and I always kind of say, hey, those are kind of the smarter folks. Those are the programmers. Those are the developers. Those are, you know, the people that are actually putting the products together. I was the guy that kind of came into the boardroom and told everybody how much stuff cost and what color you could get it in. So, you know, but networking and going to conferences and, you know, doing that type of thing, you know, pitching people was kind of my career, you know, and so it was a really easy transition into kind of commercial real estate and syndication where you have to do a lot of that stuff, right? Where you're doing a lot of networking, you're pitching a lot of people, you're going to events, you're passing out business cards. And so it was, like I said, it was an easy transition for me. And, you know, now it's just a different product, right? You know, yeah. I'm selling the opportunities, right, of the syndication that we're, the projects that we're doing. So, but yeah, no, I did that up until, because I mean, like everybody does, you kind of do a dual track there. I did that for about 15 years, you know, and learned a lot, you know, and we've also, me and my business partner, because he's on the IT side too. We've introduced a lot of technology into our business and the way that we do things just because we had that background and we knew about all this different technology and software that you could use to, you know, make things more efficient, be more productive, you know, streamline processes that might be, you know, a little bit laborious for some folks. And so it actually, you know, the background and all the experience that I got from there really, really helped, you know, create what I'm doing now. So it was a good experience.
So why did you choose real estate as your investment vehicle when you started?
You know, I think it was one of those things that I was always interested in. And, you know, it was back, so 2012, you know, my wife was pregnant with my daughter. You obviously have 9 months. You can only redo the baby or do the baby's room once, you know, and you can only clean the house so many times. So I was reading a lot, you know, and I was listening to a lot of podcasts as well. I was kind of looking for, you know, I would say not like a side hustle, but you know, just another revenue stream, right? You know, because I'm in sales, right? You got commissions, you know, things are they fluctuate depending on, you know, where we're at in the market and, you know, what stuff I have in my pipeline. So I was looking for something that kind of supplement that a little bit. And I came across Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I'm sure as a lot of your listeners probably read that book, heard about Robert Kiyosaki. And, you know, what I would say is that it's kind of light on how to do real estate, but it's very, very heavy on kind of mindset and getting you, you know, pumped up about the potential of real estate. And so I knew at that point, like I said, a light bulb just kind of went off in my mind. I was like, I'm going to do this. And so, you know, kind of took that plunge, you know, invested in all the gurus and all the classes that you can, learned a bunch of stuff and, you know, it's made me a better syndicator along the way.
So yeah, tell us about your first real estate investment. What type of property, what happened, what went wrong, what went right?
So there's a lot that went wrong. They're not, none of them are, even now, right? You know, there's always challenges. You know, we underwrite very, very conservatively because we know that there's going to be hiccups, right? That there's going to be things that you can't control. Now we try to control everything that we can. But the problem with these 70s, 80s, even 90s assets is that you're going to have stuff that's going to break down. Some of the stuff's getting up against its useful life, right? And it was no different on my first deal. But to kind of, you know, I'll keep it real short. I was, you know, I'd kind of gone through all the training, spent all the money, you know, and they really get you kind of hyped up about buying a deal, but I wasn't getting any traction, right? So, you know, I took a different approach and I started approaching people that were doing deals. to say, hey, do you have anything that maybe, you had passed on that I could just take a look at? I'm just trying to underwrite and kind of fine tune that skill, right? Which was, I'm good around the spreadsheet, but I wasn't great. So I wanted to learn more about the numbers and the underwriting piece of the business. And of course, people are happy to do that. It's stuff that they lost or whatever. So they're like, yeah, take a look at this deal. Take a look at this deal, right? As long as you're not competing against them. And so this one gentleman, we're based in Houston, and this other guy was too. He's like, yeah, take a look at this one deal. And it was called Huntington Park. It's a little 92 unit property in Beaumont. Beaumont's 90 miles east of Houston on I-10. And, a little sleepy town. I'd known about Beaumont. You drive through it on your way to New Orleans from Houston, but never thought about it as a place to invest, right? I was always looking in Houston. And he's like, hey, I've got some assets out here, but this one just doesn't fit our model. So I started looking at it, and it was, long-term owner, local broker that didn't know what he was doing, didn't know how to price anything. And ultimately the financials were not recasted or everything was just as it was. So it was in a PDF. Some stuff was handwritten in, and as a syndicator, anybody that knows, if you start seeing those, you're like, okay, how can we make this one work? And so, I really dug in deep on that one, right? Because you're not doing anything else. So I had a lot of time to dig into things. So I started getting quotes on this and, recasting this and all the stuff. And before I know it, the deal actually looked really, really good. And so they wanted $3 million for it. After I'd done all my adjustments, the NOI was $300,000. So that's a 10 cap, and this was back in 2015. Yeah. So, even back then, even in Beaumont, which is a secondary market, you're not buying 10 caps.
Right.
And so I went back to Mike, who was the guy that had shown. I was like, did you actually look at this deal? And he's like, well, I kind of looked at it for 5 seconds. And he just passed on it, but that's, sometimes you don't have enough time to dig into it when you're doing deals. So I went through my numbers. He picked it apart, asked questions, did his own underwriting. And then he came back to me. He's like, yeah, we got something here. What do you want to do? I said, well, why don't we partner? And he's like, well, how do you want to split this? And I was like, well, what about 50-50? And I was like, okay, let's do it. So, at this point, Mike had 2,000 units. He has a nice balance sheet, net worth, all the stuff that the bank likes to see. I had the hustle, and putting all the deals together and raising all the money. So, ultimately got very advantageous terms on the contract as well. And we ultimately ended up buying it. But the one challenge that we did have on that deal, for one challenge was Mike was never around. So I had to learn a lot of the stuff the hard way. The other challenge is that we had Hurricane Harvey that blew through this part of the country in 2017, and a third of Huntington Park flooded. Wow. Now, luckily we had flood insurance on the deal, and, on an $8,200 a year policy, they paid out $2.1 million. So we were able to more than, bring the units back online and update the property, and we released it back up. But if we didn't have that flood insurance, it would have been a different story. I probably wouldn't be talking to you today because, I would have lost the property and there wouldn't have been any more properties after that. So that's the power of insurance. I always tell people, make sure you have insurance. If you're along the coast, and this, you're in Florida, right? You have hurricanes, stuff happens. Make sure that you have the proper insurance, because you just never know when you're going to need it. And in this case, it was definitely needed. Because we would have had to come out of pocket the $2 million, or you just give the property back and then you lose everybody's money. So it would have been a bad situation. So, but learned a lot along the way, because I was having to do a lot of it on my own. Learned the right way to do some things. Learned a lot of wrong ways not to do things too. But it was ultimately, at the end of the day, we ended up selling that deal for 365% return to our investors. Wow. So it was a home run deal at the end of the day. Wow. But it was really, what do they say? You make money when you buy. That was really the case there. I bought that at 32 a door. I sold it for 76 a door. So, you just, if you buy right, you're going to stumble into equity at that point. So,
yeah. A couple things I just want to bring up, like you were only paying less than $100 a year per unit for that flood insurance. And I mean, the wave of difference that it made literally, because we look at deals here and even if they're close, they're not in the plane and they're much less expensive. It's always smart to get that flood insurance. And the other thing too, is that I always think is a great idea as well, is you're dealing with a broker at that time that was less savvy with the property that you're looking at, and someone obviously gave them property to try to save on commission, and the person has no idea what they're doing. And
they didn't have any buyers.
Yeah,
no
buyer list.
Yeah, they had no buyers. The only reason that Mike even found out about it is because the guy found out that Mike owned properties in the area, and he was just picking up the phone, calling just local people, and that's how Mike stumbled across it. But he's not like an ARA or any of these bigger firms that have thousands and thousands of people on their buyers list. So that was
right,
to our benefit, right?
Yeah. The other thing too, with like commercial brokers, is I find is if they don't specialize in that asset class. So if you have someone that sells land or self-storage units, hey, let me know when you have multifamily that comes in and here's parameters or anything really, and I'll take a look at it. And they don't have that buyer's list where these other, like you said, big guys, they have a mailing list. A deal comes in, they send it out to them. And in this market, I mean, it's selling for anything really.
Yeah. This guy was single family. He did single family homes.
There you go.
So I'm like, and even to this day, me and Ferris, my business partner here at Disrupt Equity, I mean, if we see something like that, where it's kind of it's an odd mix, like the guy has he might be out of California, but he's trying to broker a deal here in Texas and he doesn't have a lot of buyers, right? I mean, or something like that, where it's a little bit off. We always gravitate to those deals because you might get a little bit of a price discount because they just don't know. They either don't have the buyer pool or they don't know how to price it correctly.
Right. Yeah.
So love those deals.
Yeah. So you pretty much did everything on that first deal, a little bit of everything. So what is your role at Disrupt Equity?
So currently, I kind of gravitate more towards, we all have to raise equity, right? That's just kind of part of the deal of being a syndicator. So I do a lot of that, and I keep up with my investors, but more so I'm on the asset management side of the business. So, we've got an in-house asset manager, but I manage him, and kind of make sure that we're executing on our business plan. And then any one-off stuff that kind of goes along with that, right? From managing the K1s to doing cost segregation and all the other stuff, property tax protests, all that stuff. I manage that process, or I, make sure that they're getting it done. And then ultimately we have several other businesses that, because we're vertically integrated, that both me and Ferris help run as well. And so, that occupies the rest of my time. So I don't know if there's any more hours in the day for me to work too much more, but, that's property management and a couple other things that we do as well.
Nice.
So, yeah. So I'd say I'm more on the operations side, not to say that I couldn't wine and dine the brokers or I couldn't do more equity raise, but, there's for 6 months, or at least the last 6 months, we haven't done much of that, right? Because of COVID. So that's kind of, we've realigned how we do things internally.
Interesting. Awesome. Yeah. It's just having the broker relationships and doing some of the preliminary underwriting is a full-time job as it is. So,
Yep.
So when you're reviewing deals, multifamily acquisition deals, is there something that you want to see in a deal that you need to see to move forward? Like maybe a deal, a market, a neighborhood?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately the market is probably the first filter, right? Second filter being probably unit count. We usually try to stay above 70, 80 units, depending on where it's located at. Like now, if it's in a submarket, swanky part of town, newer asset, I might go down from there. But the people always kind of say that. And the reason that people do that is because it makes it more challenging to manage the deal. And we have property management in house, and I have to be very aware of, does it make sense for me to deploy resources to manage this deal, or should I just pass on something? So usually it has to be in the markets that we're in, which is Texas and then Georgia. And we like Florida as well, where you're located, between Tampa and Jacksonville and Orlando. We've kind of since pulled back a little bit because we're, just because of COVID, I think we're just trying to kind of focus on the markets that we have the best relationships in, and that's going to be Texas and the Atlanta market. Yeah. And so, those brokers know what we're looking for. They know the unit counts that we're kind of trying to take a look at. They know the cap rates that we're trying to look for when we're going in on these things, and the types of deals, right? Like they know not to send me a deal that's, some class A plus stuff, in the swankiest part of town. This is not the type of deal we look for. right? We usually look for C and B stuff, 70s, 80s, 90s assets, that are tired or mismanaged, or, there's a clear path to executing a business plan. I don't like boarded up deals either. So if I see those, I pass on those almost immediately. But there's some guys that love that stuff, but that's just that's not our wheelhouse, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. It depends on your investors, and it depends on your team too for deals like that.
Yeah. We've now, having said that, I've done deals like that, right? Where there's been 30, 40 down units. But that's the reason why I have no more hair, right? It's not something that, to keep my stress level down, I try to have a little bit cleaner of a deal. But no, there's guys that they gravitate, that's all they do, and so, but yeah, we're looking for a little bit nicer assets these days.
Okay. So you mentioned COVID, you handle a lot of the management side. So at the, where we are at the end of 2020, how has your business changed during COVID in regards to acquisitions as well as asset management?
Quite a bit, right? It certainly slowed down. There was essentially nothing for about 2 or 3 months. And then we started kind of seeing in probably June and July, we started seeing some stuff open up. And then in August and even right now in September, when we're airing this or when we're filming this, there's been a ton of deals the last couple months. And I think it's a lot of just pent up supply that people were just holding off until the market was in a little bit better shape. And then they're just dumping their deals on potential buyers. What has changed for us is that, like I said, our markets that we're going to play in has shrank, right? We're trying to be a little bit more targeted. I think the deals that we're looking at are a little bit nicer too. We've noticed that, Class C, especially in this environment, is extremely susceptible to job losses. And so, whereas the B and the A- stuff, is kind of coasting along, because a lot of those folks are probably going to be more working professionals, going to have the opportunity to work from the house. So therefore they're not going to lose their job. But people that are in retail, service industries, that type of stuff, there's no working from home. There's no doing your job from Zoom. Right. And so in this cycle, right, in this downturn, it's been different than it was in 8, 9, and 10. And I was in business in 8, 9, and 10. This is completely different than it was. Yep. And so I think a lot of people's thesis was, kind of stick with this kind of workforce housing stuff. And, because the bars and the restaurants and the retail, even in 8, 9, and 10, people were still going out, spending money, doing that type of stuff, especially bars and restaurants. Now, when you have a lockdown, literally these places are not even open.
Right.
And so it puts these people in a really tight spot because they don't have, the savings and the resources to, and that's why it's so important that, both the administration and Congress come together and, help with some kind of relief. Right. Not necessarily just for my benefit, right? I'll be all right. We'll figure it out. It's more so to help those folks kind of get through this downturn. So knowing all of that, we've decided to kind of start looking at a little bit cleaner of assets that we feel might be a little bit more stable in the next few years. So, I think that's what's changed over the last 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really think people talk about 2008 and today, and I own multifamily in 06 plus and on, and it's completely different. You can't compare 08 to COVID. You can't compare 08 to early 90s. You can't compare it to, interest rates in the early 80s. You can't compare it to anything. It's completely different. And it's like you said, like 08, 09, if you owned a bar, you'd probably be killing it. And if you owned a bar now, it hasn't been open.
You're getting killed. Yeah. It's just a different, so it's, you kind of go back to, just make sure you buy right, make sure you buy for cash flow and, buy in good areas. Yeah. That still kind of seems true. The Class C stuff, I think the other reason that we're kind of gravitating out of it, it's not necessarily all COVID related because we were making this transition pre-COVID. Especially here in Texas, there's just a ton of people doing this stuff. And I think a lot of this stuff is tapped out. You can only value add the same property like 3 or 4 times. There's no more meat left on that bone. Yeah. So, sure. Maybe, and cap rates are so compressed, right, that, you're buying a Class C at 5.5 when maybe you can get a 20-year newer asset at 5.25, right? So kind of look at that, right? Is the risk adjusted rewards there?
Yeah.
Or should you just step up and buy a little bit better deal? That's
The value add model only works in certain markets where you're having certain markets and certain market portions of the cycle too. I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, are you really going to kick out, you can't evict anybody now. Are you really going to not renew anybody's lease so that you can go in there and renovate a unit? I mean, that's a really risky proposition to take on. But you're talking,
and people are struggling to keep people in the units that are paying, right? Like, so you're going to be really aggressive on renewals too, just to be able to update that unit. I don't think so. Because you're not going to, you don't want to take that bet that you're going to be able to spend that $5 to $10 grand a unit, then get in somebody that's going to pay another $150, per month. Yeah. Not right now.
Yeah, very risky. And then it's most operators are holding on to cash anyway.
Yep.
Some of them are even pausing or just delaying some of the payouts to their investors to be even safer. But like you said, I think it's going to be the smaller landlords that are the ones that are going to be really affected, because the larger syndicators, if had to be, before anything ever happened, you can pause. You can pause distributions. You can go into your reserves. There's all different types of things we can do. For someone that's just getting money in their account and then trying to pay their mortgage from a 5 or 8 unit property, those are where the problem's going to be, especially when they're going back to refinance it and they find out, hey, you 3 units of this aren't even paying anymore. Like, you can't even value the property. So now you need, $100,000 more or $50,000 more just to refinance it. Yep. So I feel that's going to be the problem. Is, like always, it's always the smaller businesses that are always going to get the brunt of it. But so we were talking before about your career and what you were doing. How did what you did before real estate, how are you brought some of that IT, some of those systems in place into your current business with Disrupt?
Disrupt is a very tech term, right? And we did that for a reason, right? We're trying to kind of reimagine the way that the business is kind of done. It was a little bit fractured, a little bit old school as far as how the syndication process was kind of rolled out. But on top of that, we weren't the only ones making that. There's things like IMS and some other stuff that has made the process of syndication more streamlined through technology. And I think we've just adopted a lot of the things that we see in the market in terms of software, right? We use Teams, which, has, some capabilities similar to Slack, which people might have heard of too. We use Asana in terms of project and task management. We use things at the property management level, right? That help us kind of keep track of unit turns and, keeping people accountable and making sure that things are getting done on time, right? We're no longer doing stuff on a whiteboard in the manager's office. And so, some of those things is we didn't develop those or create those. We just, because of our background, me and Ferris's background, we just knew of things that could help in syndication, right? And just communication with, both partners and our staff as well as investors. And we've just adopted those very, very quickly. And some are good, some are bad, and it's what I love about our business is that we can quickly pivot, right? This is not working, let's try something different. Right. So, but yeah, from me personally, like I said, I was a salesperson. So that's helped me quite a bit in investors, raising equity and doing investor relations and ultimately just pitching deals, because that was essentially what I was doing before, right? I was just selling a product. Now I'm selling the opportunity to invest in one of our projects. And so a little bit different thing that I'm pitching, but still ultimately the same process. I'm developing relationships. And I think that has helped me raise. At this point, we've raised about 25 million. So, it's been successful and, but yeah, then on the flip side of it, I've kind of gravitated more towards operations, but hey, when you're not raising any more money because you're not doing any deals right now, you got to do something else. Right.
You're right.
So, but yeah.
So over the past 7 years in business, what mistakes do you commonly see real estate investors make?
Analysis paralysis. I think if you want to do a deal, you can get into a deal very quickly, right? But you have to be able to add value, right? Now people say, "Oh, I don't have enough money." Well, do you have time? Right? Well, if you got time, right, you can find somebody that has the money, right? And then you take the time to go find a deal, and then you marry that with the guy or gal that has money, and you guys go and partner, right? I can deconstruct anybody's argument as to why they haven't gotten into a deal. And I can look at them and I can usually size somebody up in about 2 seconds and say, this guy or gal's not going to do a deal anytime soon, if they ever do a deal, right? Because a lot of it, they just get caught up in their head that, it has to be the perfect deal, perfect numbers, perfect sub-market. And if it doesn't check every single one of those boxes, I'm not even going to make an offer.
Right.
And I always tell people, make offers, right? The brokers get scored by the amount of offers that come in on that deal as well as what the price was at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. And so they'd much rather see that you're a player, that you're actually taking this stuff seriously than constantly calling them, talking about new deals, asking them a ton of questions, and then never making an offer. Right? That's analysis paralysis. Make an offer that makes sense, right? Even if you feel like it's a low ball offer and it's never going to get you anywhere. The broker is going to see you as, hey, these guys are in the market. They're actually going to buy something. We just have to find them the right deal.
Yeah. Especially if you have some facts behind it showing why you're doing this. And if it's done, doesn't have to be a story. It can be a few bullet points. They're going to look at it and be like, wow, okay, this person actually looked at the deal, unlike the other people that are on my mailing list. And now I just have to find something that pencils here, and I'll definitely take their phone call and I'll definitely return their email. So that's kind of what the goal is. But I see a lot. I'll get emails or emails that come in with different articles, and it's like, if there's anything negative about multifamily, someone that's in the analysis paralysis, I'm like, just one article on CNBC about, they're like, it's all coming down. It's coming. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not all coming down. I want to.
And what I love about real estate too, it's hyper local too, right? And we saw this at 8, 9, and 10, right? Some real estate got crushed. Mm-hmm. Some really wasn't that affected. I lived here in Texas. We were pretty insulated from the Great Recession, especially here in Houston, because oil and gas at that time was above $100. It was roaring. And so you didn't see the downturn that, say, like a Vegas or a Florida or California might have seen in some areas. And so that's the other thing too. When people send me articles like that too, you're like, give me a break, man. The whole real estate market is not falling apart. Trust me.
It's also very slow it's very slow compared to, when you're comparing it to like the stock market or something like this. So you're not going to wake up one day and find out that 50% of your tenants just stopped paying rent or anything like that. The other thing too is about when you're looking at deals and they want to find that grand slam. And for me, it was something when we started investing, the first deal we did was like a single, and then we bought it like in 08, and that was like more like a double or triple. And then we bought it in like 09, and that was like a home run. So it's like consistently looking at deals and consistently pulling the trigger on deals and just making sure that you have like minimized your downside, I think is what I would say on it as well. But
definitely.
What do you think are the main factors that have contributed to your success, Ben?
I think partnering, man. I think I've been able to partner and team up with the right people that added, value to what maybe I was lacking. Mm-hmm. And, versus trying to do it all on my own. I've certainly given up equity and given up money that I could have potentially made, if I had done it all on my own. But I look at it like this, right? This is another reason I love real estate. It's all about leverage, right? Not only leverage like on the debt side, right? Through loans, I'm leveraging other people's equity, right? Their money to get into the deal, right? Or I'm leveraging people's time or people's experience. Mm-hmm. Right. Because, one or two of these deals trying to do it all on your own, you're going to get buried. There's just too many, especially if you're doing a heavy rehab, there's a lot of management issues. There's a lot of moving pieces here. And so I think me having identified, the right partners and the right team members and the right staff, has probably been the reason why I've been successful versus just my own personal effort. Right. And so, but that's all about recruiting, right? And putting yourself in the right place. Proximity is power, as they like to say, right? You got to be in the right spot to find these people. So I always tell people, you don't like to network. You don't like to get out. And this is all going to be post-COVID, right? Because there's not a whole lot of networking going on right now. You have to get out there, because you're not going to be able to do this from the backside of your computer, sitting at your desk,
The other thing too is that you're kidding yourself if you think you're going to be great at asset management, raising money, underwriting deals, making broker relationships. It's just not. It's not a possibility. You'll drive yourself crazy. Going from underwriting to driving out the properties and reviewing them, or getting on a call with the property managers and everything like that.
Yeah, it's not scalable, right? Yeah. Like I said, after 1 or 2 deals, you're buried, and you'll never have enough time to go find your third deal.
Right.
So,
So you started Investor Academy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I came up through kind of the guru gauntlet is what I like to kind of tell people, and some of those ecosystems and the groups and the people that you meet within those groups are great.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm not here to bash those, but the training was always very weak. Right. And a lot of what the gurus like to talk about is the sexy as the fun stuff, right? The acquisitions, how to find a deal, how to raise money, right? That type of thing. And maybe even how to underwrite a deal. Nobody is ever talking about post-acquisition. Nobody's talking about asset management or property management, or once you buy that deal, what do you do now? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people that's when the hard work actually begins, right? You got to execute your business plan. And there's a lot of things that have to happen in sequence that nobody's talking about. And so, during COVID, the other problem that is that there's not a lot of opportunities to kind of be in front of people, right? So we wanted to have an online platform for that people can learn at their own pace from their laptops, from their tablet, from their computer, right? And, learn some of the stuff that was lacking in these other groups, right? At an affordable price. One thing I'm telling people too is, we'll have the real estate track within Investor Academy, but we'll also have stock investing. We'll have, somebody talking about precious metals and franchise investing. So it's essentially giving people the opportunity to kind of dive deep into any one of these avenues in terms of investing and figure out which one they like. Right. And then from there, if they want to dig any deeper, right, we can always put them onto our partners and our friends and say, hey, this gentleman or this person is offering, more of a mastermind or, one-on-one personal training, go reach out to them. Right. So it gives you a nice swath of, once you're kind of getting new into investing, what do I want to do? It gives you the opportunity to kind of dip your toe into a lot of different things. So that's what investoracademy.net is. It's been a lot of fun kind of shooting the videos, and, you kind of step back, you're like, man, there's so much stuff that people are learning,
Mm-hmm.
or haven't been able to learn, through these other groups. And so that's, we're just trying to fill that gap at this point.
Right. Yeah, they never ask you or they never tell you about how to manage your investors afterwards. When do I give them updates? You the only way of learning that is you have to invest passively and see what other people are doing and see what works best for your firm. But it's completely, they end the goal is just to buy it, and you haven't done any work to it. You haven't created any equity. You haven't done anything really. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. How do you manage the manager, right? How do you manage the property manager? How do you do K1s and disseminate those properly? When do you do cost segregation? And, it's just, unless you run a business, even then I would say that you would still have a challenge figuring it out, but at least you'd have a leg up, right? But a lot of people that I see in this business, right, they come from IT, or they come from engineering, or they come from one of those gigs that they're more of a working professional. Mm-hmm. They weren't an entrepreneur or a business owner, right? And so that makes it even more challenging for them to be like, okay, now what? So that's what we're trying to do with Investor Academy. And, we're excited to kind of roll that out and keep growing with it.
Okay. And then other than Investor Academy, how can our listeners learn more about you and your company?
Yeah. So I would say first, check us out. Our website's www.disruptequity.com, spelled just like it sounds. And if you want, obviously, as people can probably tell, I love talking this stuff. So if you do want to reach out to me, my email is ben@disruptequity.com. And we could certainly set up a time to chat there. And, and that's investors and people that are just interested in talking real estate. I'm an open book, very transparent about this stuff.
Awesome. Okay. So I'll put all those links in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on today, Ben, and looking forward to connecting you in the future once all this COVID's over.
Thanks, Charles. I appreciate it, buddy.
Hi, guys. It's Charles from the Global Investors Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're interested in getting involved with real estate, but you don't know where to begin, set up a free 30-minute strategy call with me at schedulecharles.com. That's schedulecharles.com. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Global Investor Podcast. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play to get new weekly episodes. For more resources and to receive our newsletter, please visit globalinvestorpodcast.com. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode.
Nothing in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this podcast are limited to accredited investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure, subscription documentation, and are subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Harborside Partners Incorporated exclusively.